Before we get started, Josh and I wanted to start with the question for you all of what is one skill that you're rubbish at? So please answer that in the chat. What's a skill that you're absolutely either terrible at and or you don't want to learn, like you never want it to like be in your wheelhouse, something that you would rather just like have somebody else handle. I gotta find my chat again. There it went. Fundraising. Oh yeah. Me too, Liz. Fixing a lamp, social media, back-end coding. Ooh, lots of social media. Good. All right. Keep them coming if you haven't answered the question yet. And I'm going to kick it over to Josh and ask him to share his screen so we can get started on. And I'm going to like move us along quickly because I'm a little gun shy from yesterday. I felt like it was just like a total rush. So we're going to get through the content quickly and hopefully have some time for questions at the end.
There we go. Hello, everybody. All right. So we're just going to introduce ourselves. We're going to be talking about volunteer engagement and management strategies, which is something we are both very passionate about and talked for hours and hours and hours, just trying to whittle down what we actually wanted to say during this half an hour. If you didn't get to meet me yesterday or from before, my name is Josh Epstein. I'm the executive director for Seattle REconomy, and we are a nonprofit in Seattle and the shoreline area that is supporting the circular economy, mostly through sharing. We have 2 tool libraries, the Northeast Seattle Tool Library, and starting in exactly a month from today is the new Shoreline Tool Library. We have a small staff of 5 part-time and then 150 volunteers. So volunteerism is core to what we are trying to do. We also do events and classes, and we're just getting into selling used building materials and many other circularity and repair funnesses. That's us. Terra?
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody. I'm Terra. And most recently, I ran the Repair Clark County program in Southwest Washington. I'm not doing that program right now. Unfortunately, we lost funding. But when I started that program about 5 years ago, we had about 99 volunteers. We had exactly 99 volunteers on our list. And then when we lost funding, we had 263. So I hopefully will have some interesting and helpful things to say about volunteering. So go ahead and move on to the next slide. And I can't remember, Josh, is this you or me?
This is you.
Okay, cool. So this is what we're talking about. We're not going to death by PowerPoint you all can read presumably. But we just wanted to make the point that what we're going to be talking about is that a lot of people are probably underutilizing volunteers, and we want to change that. So again, hopefully we will give you some strategies in order to do that.
Yeah, so I think a good place to start is, why don't we involve volunteers? There's often the thing where you find yourself, I've been in this situation where I find myself doing something that there's other people that might be better suited for it, have more time for it, could leave me open to do some of the more strategic things that I'm actually paid to do. And so these are the reasons we came up with. I'm sure there's a billion reasons, but it takes time to save time. So just asking, it takes time to figure out who you want to volunteer and how you're going to ask them and how you're going to coordinate with them. Sometimes it's hard to ask. We don't want to be denied. We don't want to put somebody in a position of obligation, maybe. Maybe you already know how to do it and it just feels quicker to do it yourself. I think that's a pretty common one. Maybe you don't trust anyone else to do it. They're not going to do it as well as you. And sometimes that may be the case. And so being really strategic about who and when you're asking things and how you can let go of that, some of that can be really freeing. But that leads to the last thing. Sharing ownership is hard, but ultimately, I think extremely freeing. So look at those. Think, is there any of those that resonate with you, that there's been a time where you probably could have used a volunteer, but one of these stood in your way? Feel free to throw ideas in the chat. Maybe there's other reasons why you have a hard time making asks and involving volunteers. So that's that's why I find that sometimes I don't use volunteers when I could involve them more.
And so then we wanted to say, well, why should we be using the volunteers? And again, there's, so many reasons. There's probably ones that we didn't list here. One of the ones that I am so passionate about is number 6. And you'll notice that number 6 connects back to the question that I asked at the offset, which is volunteers can do things better than you. And I don't know if any of you caught it, but during my intro yesterday, I said something like, we have a lot of years of experience in this, the planning committee does, but we don't have the experience that you do. And so that is true also for the 263 people that were a part of my program at the end. And I found that when I did ask volunteers, that they were able to not only answer, yes, I can do that for you, but then like they would usually take it even farther, right? And so they're just better at doing the things. And none of us can do all the things all the time. And so Josh and I wanted to talk about that specifically. Josh, I'm not going to go through all of these. Was there anything else you wanted to say on this slide?
Yeah, I think the two that I'll highlight, well, and I'll just say, Liz, I believe, is our moderator. Liz, if you see any things in the chat that you want, we'll do question and answer at the end. We're definitely gonna have time for that.
Yeah,
but
it's actually Suzie, but I'm here and
Suzie, thank you.
I'm taking a look. You got it.
Great,
Yeah,
Suzie. Yeah, feel free to interrupt.
I think raising hands isn't, someone raised their hand, but I don't think we're going to be able to, it's hard to even see that with all the stuff.
Yeah.
So share your stuff in the chat and I'll get to it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Suzie. The two that I want to highlight are that people want to be part of things they create. And that doesn't mean that they need to be part of something that the start of it, but movements and revolutions generally happen when people have some sense of ownership. So getting people involved in that way, it disperses the ownership, which can go back to that why we don't do things and the trust aspect of it, but can also ultimately make things much stronger because you have that many people that feel ownership. And the other part that I really want to highlight is number 7, which is I really truly believe that sharing this purpose and sharing your mission is a service to the volunteers themselves. There is truly a gift in asking somebody to do something. And I hope people have felt that experience where somebody's doing you a favor or working for your organization for free, and they seem somehow to be getting more out of it because they.
Josh, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a problem with your audio. You're kind of sounding like a robot, Josh.
That's too bad. Let me see.
We get the human Josh back.
But I will try.
It was fine at the beginning, and then now it's odd.
Is this better or worse?
Much better.
Much better. Great. All right. If it gets roboty again, let me know. Cool. Well, I'll just to reiterate that there's service and a gift in letting volunteers and involving volunteers and sharing with volunteers your purpose.
Yeah. I want to say something really quick to that. So I think what we're trying to say there is, you might be thinking in the first slide, we said, it's hard to ask, right? And you might be like worried about the rejection or worried about putting somebody out or asking too much of them. And I think the flip side of that is that you are giving purpose. And I'll tell like a really super short story, which is when the pandemic hit, we started making masks, sewing masks, and we made over, I think, 1,800 or something like that over the year that we were doing it or whatever. And I had multiple of the sewists tell me afterwards, like, you helped me keep my sanity. You gave me a reason and something to do, something to focus on. And it like carried me through the pandemic. So I just like, I get chills even just like thinking of that story and telling other people that. So I think that's really, really important.
I love that. Yes, that is exactly it. I hope other people have felt that experience, some version of that. So that's our quick pitch of like volunteers are important. If you're here, you probably feel that already. You either have a need for it or you have a sensation that there's an inclination that volunteers could be helpful for you. So we want to spend more of the time on how we have found success in doing that. So we do it with 3 things we've identified. I think there's more, but these are our big things: communication, purpose, and snacks. So we're going to get into all 3 of those and what those mean.
Sorry, all my thing keeps popping up in my way here. Yeah, so communication, we, making the ask early and often, and in multiple ways. And we're going to talk about that, I think, in a second here. So I won't say too much about it. But the first communication that somebody has with your program or with you specifically is really important. And what I always tried to do was I just tried to make sure that people felt really welcome, and just make sure that, there is a place for you here, and we'll figure out what it is. We might not know right this second, but together we're gonna figure this out. But just making sure that people, were welcomed right off the bat was important. And then the other thing that Josh and I both do is, get them in the first time, and then, during that first interaction with your program is the time to sign up for the second one, right? So it's a little bit, what's the thing I'm thinking of? Like I'm trying to say like a drug dealer, but that's not what I mean. Like you want, that's your best opportunity. It's the quickest and easiest and most effective way to and also it's a really awesome place to communicate about whether or not it worked for them, right? The thing that they, we're going to talk about having a menu of options and ordering off the menu in a second here. But, that's a really fantastic spot too, to say like, did you enjoy it? Like, do you want to try this? Do you want to just do the exact same thing again? Was this totally not your bag? And if that's the case, like, let's address that too. But that's what we wanted to say about communication.
Yeah, I'll jump on that and say that communicate easy entry point for volunteering. I think that's a huge thing for us. Is for us, the first thing that most volunteers do is just checking in or checking out tools at the tool library. And it's really simple. We have trainings every single time we're open. And so you sign up your form and we can get you going. You just do basically one communication and you're in. There's not a lot of back and forth, which is really easy to lose volunteers when there's a ton of back and forth. So one thing that could be helpful for you all if you're trying to build up your volunteerism is I'd recommend 2 things from this slide. One is think of a new way that you can ask, whether that's like verbally write to somebody, I'm going to ask more people, or can you put up a sign somewhere, put something on your website. The second is, what is the most common easy entry point for volunteering that you want to set up for folks that, oh, I would love to volunteer. So it's not like, well, you can do this, you can do this. Like, we'd love you to come for this training. It's this date. Come on in. And then from there, you can go off into multiple directions.
Yeah. I'm going to elevate that too and say that you reminded me, Josh, of our conversation about, and I meant to say this at the offset and I totally forgot. But that is, so I ran a repair program and Josh more works in the tool library space. So some of the things that we tell you are going to be slightly different, but we did find a ton of similarities across. And for us, I always unless somebody absolutely knew that they like only wanted to work on appliances or they only wanted to be a greeter or whatever the thing was, what I often told them was like, your first one out, I just want you to wander. I want you to wander around, talk to fixers, talk to clients, talk to me, ask questions. That's really your first volunteering experience with the event, so that you're getting a grand overview, so that then you as a volunteer understand where you might fit. And then, then they can be telling you, I think I really want to try X, instead of, you like trying to work it out with them or whatever. So that was our easy point. It was like, yeah, show up, just come see it. Just come, let it wash over you.
Great. Just a couple quick more notes about communication. Consistent updates, staying in touch. It can just be, here's the things that we did this last week, or it can be, here's some stuff that's coming up. Open resources like a calendar that they can actually sign up on themselves, and you don't need to, again, do too much back and forth, can be really helpful. We're going to get into appreciation, but that's part of the communication thing. And then creating trust is everything. I think the communication is really where that trust is built. And I don't know if anybody's had that experience where they tried to volunteer at a place, but they don't get the communication back, and you don't trust that your time is going to be valued. Number 2, Terra.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about this choose your own adventure model. And that's just kind of the thing that we came up of a way to call it. But what we mean by that is, so in my case, it was, a lot of people would self-select because they would read an article about the repair events or whatever, and they'd be like, hey, I'm a tinkerer, I'm going to go repair, right? And so they would self-select as a fixer or a coach or, whatever you call them. But and that was kind of like the main menu, right? Like that was the menu that people probably understood. But then there were these, there was a sub menu for me at least, and that was having event management volunteers. So people to run the greeting table, people to be runners, people to we actually had something that we added called station stewards, and that was actually really helpful as well. So and then so you have your main menu, but then also be ready for those off menu orders, meaning if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I really, I came, I experienced the event, and what I think is really lacking is blank. It might be something that you've never even thought of, right? And somebody with fresh eyes came and saw an event or saw your program and was like, hey, I'm really good at this thing and I want to plug that in. Awesome, right? We want to be willing, we want to be ready for those off menu orders. And then also being willing to hear no. So if you ask somebody, hey, I think you'd be really great at this, and if you didn't hit the mark, or they don't have the time or the energy or whatever the reason is, that's not a rejection of you. It's just, it just wasn't the right fit, and you just move on and keep trying. And then also to have some roles, like I mentioned, kind of different types of roles. I think that when I first started running the repair program, I really thought of volunteers just as coaches or just as fixers. And then I started to realize that I always jokingly said, everybody wants a piece of Terra for 2 hours. And because it was like, I was getting all of these questions that, I was like, I can teach somebody how to answer this. I can teach somebody to be an assistant to the event itself. And so I started coming up with all these different roles. And the question that I actually didn't answer, but I asked you all, the thing that I'm terrible at is remembering to take pictures or videos during the thing. So I'll go like a full 2 hours and then get to the very end and have like either 1 or 0 pictures on my phone. And I'm like, how did I like totally space that? And so I specifically started doing a social media steward, like, and sometimes I would have multiple people. I'd have 1 or 2 people, because everyone has a different eye for photography and video and things like that too. So I'm going to stop there. I don't know how we're doing on time, but I feel like I want to keep moving forward.
We're running low, but this is good stuff. I completely agree with all that. I'll throw in just a couple of things, and then maybe, Terra, we can like skip through the appreciation stuff pretty quick so we can get to some question and answer, because I see a bunch of chat stuff. But okay. I do want to mention opportunities for growing. Quick story. We've had several members who, it says volunteers must do something helpful day one. They don't must. I find that extremely helpful. That I find we have much more retention. And I have probably 10 to 20 volunteers now that started day one, felt impactful from the beginning, wanted to get more impactful, became part of task forces, became part of steering committees, and now those are our board members and our steering committee and the decision makers, and are actually do weekly work with us. The other thing I want to just pinpoint is this: have a quality, purposeful program, which is easier said than done. I hope everybody feels like they have that. But people want to be part of something that's quality and purposeful. If you don't feel like you have that right now, that's fine. You're working towards that. I think there's probably volunteers that want to help build that. So that's where you're at, and look for that. I'm going to go real quick through this. Just the question that is another sort of take home for you is who, not how. You have a problem. For Terra, it's taking photos. For me, it's actually like detail stuff, like having the checklists, bigger picture. And so who can do this for me? Because I'm not going to do it well. And then what can you delegate? Can you delegate training? Can you delegate operations? Can you delegate what Terra delegated, which is delegation? Yeah, if they're helping serve the mission and they believe in the mission, they will feel purpose. Just a nice thought to have on that. But the third thing, so important, is
Snacks.
gotta have them.
Yes.
We
very
use that
much
as a
so.
catch-all for this.
Yeah, appreciation. I wanted to say one thing about appreciation, and that was I was watching something recently, and I realized that near the end of my time with my program, I was not doing as good of a job as at sharing the kudos that I was getting from clients. So it used to be where it was like a part of my monthly thing. So every time we had an event, I had like an after event checklist. And part of that was, pick out, 6 or 8 different like really lovely things that people said, and then share that out with the fixers. And I think I got kind of complacent about it. And the other thing I wanted to say about appreciation and kind of empowerment, I guess, is I had an experience where I was a volunteer for something, and they actually didn't call us volunteers. They called us ambassadors. And they made it very, very clear that they trusted us, that they would have our backs on decisions that we made, that they expected us to jump in where it felt like it made sense. And that was, I loved it. For me, that was like incredibly empowering. And I went back and and this was like a big event over multiple days. And I spent tons of my own time and energy on that thing because of how they treated us at the offset. So those are just, those are a few little things anecdotes I want to share with you about appreciation.
Yeah, as you can tell, we could talk about this all day. We love it. Appreciation, it could be just about appreciation, but so this is just seeds for thought. Here's our contact information. Feel free to reach out to either of us or both of us with questions, because we're not going to be able to get to everything. But we do feel really passionate about this being a part of the sharing economy is sharing the purpose. So with that, why don't we see if we can get a few questions?
Yep. So here's what I have 2 questions that have come in about outreach strategies, if you could speak to them. And one in particular was asking about a new tool library. How does a new tool library do that if that's different than the other?
Yeah, there's so many outreach strategies. For our new tool library, we reached out to the city and work with the city a lot. And so we were just going to tool libraries sell themselves, I find. And I think a lot of these things in this area sell themselves in that like it's intuitive once you get it. And so we just go to a lot of farmers markets. We table at any event we can. We went to a really cool book signing the other day with a DIY TikToker. We had an event at City Hall. We're just always looking for events where we already have some volunteers, but we did it at the first so we could get the volunteers. But we have these different committees, and one of our committees is an outreach committee. And we have our outreach bin that's ready to go. We do some trainings with them. And often if we can have us staff go on those, that's even better. But we're going to go and we're going to just have a really easy takeaway, like a quarter sheet or a business card. It's going to have a link to the volunteer form. And then I'm always checking the volunteer form. And I prioritize responding to volunteer inquiries above pretty much everything. That is my high priority. So if you are already involved in events or you're looking for events, I find that these kind of things, repair and reuse, the person to person is the best way that I've been able to do outreach. But we've also done social media and newsletters and peer-to-peer. Terra?
I will just quickly touch on the one thing that was the most surprising to me and that was the most successful, and that was press releases. I know it's going to sound really silly, but like every time, and it doesn't have to be a press release that says we need volunteers. It often was not. It was often just like, and what I found with the press releases is if you write it well, or find a volunteer who can write for you if you're not a good writer. If you write it well, usually local media will pick it up, and oftentimes they print it exactly how you wrote it. So write it from that, write it as if you're a reporter reporting on your thing. And then I would always try to find some hook, right? Like some reason why our local media would pick it up. So, whether it was like making masks or whatever the thing is, you want to find something, if we were demonstrating 3D printers, there was always something that I was trying to, like, partnering with a different organization, whatever the thing was, put something that's a little different than like all of the other times that you've done press releases. And then, like I said, when they get picked up, and you know, we had TV, we had newspapers, we had radio programs. Those all got picked up in that because of press releases. And then we would always find that we'd probably get, I would say on average, at least 3 to 4 people would reach out to me. And again, not of me saying like, we need volunteers, because we kind of really didn't. That was a privilege that my program had. But we would always get more interested people. And also, those people are not going to necessarily stick with it, right? And that's another reason why Josh and I had talked about having that really easy entry point in the beginning protects you too. It protects your time and energy, where you haven't, you know, invested 4 hours into training someone and then they never show up again. So that's why I was always like, hey, come, you know, just kind of like wander, like do your own thing. And then you tell me if you actually want to, you know, participate the next time or whatever. And sometimes they also would just jump in. They're like, yep, I'm in. And I'm like, all right, cool.
So I'm just going to give a 3-minute warning here because we got one from Cammie, and another question came through. And if I understand it correctly, is there any particular strategy that can be used to get people who are going to volunteer, particularly sewing people, and as volunteering for free? Is that's a barrier to a lot of people? And that, if there's anything you can say to address that people are coming, they're not being paid to do these things that are skilled things. I mean, to me, that's baked into the movement, but is there anything you can say to address that?
Good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try on that. You know, we have skilled, we've had some sewers. We've had other like fixers and a lot of different skilled folks. We have people building out our shelves right now. And I think it goes back to mission. They have to be pretty bought in on your mission and that you are going to have impact. Like, I think a lot of people, ours is snowballed, and I think Terra's is too, where when they see that there's other people working on things and you're having impact and people are using the space, they will generally, we found that people want to be involved in it. And I think it also depends on your demographic. Like, are you serving people? If this person's donating their time, is it donating their time to people that can't afford to use these services unless there's volunteers? Or are they volunteering their time and it's to teach really rich people how to sew? It's a harder sell then. I think that's the best I can, in 2 minutes, that's the best answer I got. I think I can have
we're almost out of time, but the one other question was, how do you help motivate demotivated volunteers if people aren't coming?
I will quickly say, you could have things that are broken, so at least they have something to do.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you always have a menu of options. Like, somebody comes in, we have really slow nights in the winter at the tool library. So I have a list of things and I give them a menu of like, are you more of a computer person, a fixer person, a media person? And then, you know, do these things. Maybe, okay, so there's not people coming in. Let's do a project that helps spread the word. We're going to write a press release. We're going to do a social media post.
Yeah, I know in our repair cafes, we encourage people to bring something for other people to fix there if there's downtime, so that we're not bored. Right. So I agree with that. That's a great thought.
And
please do reach out.
That's so funny. I was just gonna say exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, hit us up. We'd love to talk. Thank you all for joining us.